Okay, I've got to do a little maintenance work on the furnace here. I've run it for a total of 188 days over a 4-year period and made 30,000 items. So I've run 19 tons through it since the rebuild. That's 37,600 pounds I've melted. There's 31,000 or 32,000 new pounds, and the extra here is my own cullet my cullet and rejects that I've remelted. So run 19 tons through it in 188 days and made over 30,000 items. And I've got a leak in my door, so I have to re-brick my door and possibly the hearth face on the furnace. So I keep pretty good production records here of all my furnace activity, what I make each day, what colors I make, that sort of thing. I do runs of 10 to 15 days in duration. This run here I made 1,900 things. This one here I made 2,200 things, 2,000 things, 2,500 things, 2,100. So you can see the numbers are pretty high. 2,700. I produce a lot of stuff. Go through a lot of glass. So I've taken off the yoke, I've secured the counterweight, I've cut off the rigging, and now I'm going to take these V-groove rollers off. Just these two. The other two can stay. And now I can get the door off and get it outside. Alright, let's have a little look here before I rip these bricks out. So first let's have a look at this rat hole here. It's about 1 inch deep. And I knew that I had a rat hole developing because I saw my energy consumption was going up starting about a year ago. So I probably could have dealt with this a little bit sooner, but you know, it takes a lot of effort sometimes to get around to maintenance work. So once an airway is established, the fluxes in the hot glass fumes start to dissolve the brick, and it makes the airway larger and larger as it erodes. And it develops a hard, crusty material around the edge here, which adds to the abrasion when the door's opened. And here's a look at the K26 bricks, and you can see the region here that's exposed to the inside of the furnace heating chamber. And you can see how the bricks are contracting and cracking. And there's actually no explanation for this that I can think of, because these are K26 bricks, and the highest temperature that I ever get in this furnace is 2,300. I actually sent pictures of this to the brick manufacturers, and they don't know what's going on either. This shouldn't be happening in this temperature range, but it does every time. So I've got rods pinning the bricks together in here, in the frame, and these keeper wires go through the pins about halfway down. So I'll be cutting those out first. I used nichrome element wire for these wires here. And then I can pull out the rods. And here's a look at these wires and how they held the rods tightly against the frame to hold the bricks in place. Because the bricks aren't cemented, they're loose in there. And that is nice because I can change them if I need to, which I'm doing today. So it looks like I can reuse all my bricks except for 6 of them, so I'll have to cut replacements for 6 bricks. So I flipped these ones over, and these will be the insides now. Okay, I'll get these flipped over now, so the outsides will be facing up instead of the insides, and then I can place the frame on and mark my holes down here for drilling. And now I drill the rods back in and then mark the support wires. So it's just stainless welding rod, and I just drill it in. So through the frame holes, now I have to mark the new locations for my tightening wires in these new replacement bricks. And there's one of my holes there, and here's the corresponding holes in the frame. So I'll just cut this little section out here so I can wrap a piece of wire around that. And I'll do the other three. And that one's ready. And the rods go in, and the wires get done up, and it's ready. And the wires keep the rods tight up against the bricks, keeping them tight up against the frame. And I assembled this on a nice flat surface so the hot face of the door bricks will fit the furnace tightly. And now it's time to replace some of the furnace face here. There's the corresponding rat hole from the one that was in the door. But overall this is fairly minimal erosion, considering the furnace door's been opened and closed around 75,000 times since my 2021 rebuild. So I'll start by chipping the glass out of here so I can saw the bricks out. And now just get in here carefully with a recip saw and cut the bricks. I'm going to cut them up on an angle so the pieces can be wiggled out. And I've drawn a square line along here to work from, and I'm going to use a knife or a chisel and square this up, and then I can cut my replacements. And I do a lot of vacuuming as I'm doing it to keep the dust down. Alright, the whole face is cleaned off now and ready to re-brick. And I've saved all my angles from previous builds, so I've got what I need, pre-cut. And I'll get everything cut and fit before I start cementing. Alright, so I cut and fit the two arch bricks. Now I'll get these cemented into place and get the door back on. And before I put the door back on, we'll have a look at the back of the furnace here and the pot. So again, like I said, I've melted 19 tons through this furnace already, and it's probably just slightly over half of its useful life. So now is a good time to have a look inside. And it's doing pretty good. I mean, there's the usual erosion on the pot. If that was a freestanding pot, then it would have broken open long ago, but because it's invested, I can get so much more use out of it. Alright, the door facing's done and ready for the door. And I built up the sill blocks again too, to make them level with the bottom of the door. So when I'm working, I remove that sill block there because if I was to leave it in place I would get too much glass trailing on it and it would erode the door when the door closed up against it. So I take that out during the day, and when I'm finished gathering then I place it back in again for charging. There, so as I put on the two V-grooved rollers on the right hand side, I can adjust the position of the door in the roller frame by adjusting this here. So I'll get the yoke back on and it's ready to go. So this took me about 5 hours in total, and now I'm good for probably another 30,000 items. Alright, all done. We'll get this charged up and turned on. Get back to work.